Okay, hi, good evening. I'm aware that you've all been sat here for kind of 20, 30 minutes or so. I'm also aware that I'm what's standing in the middle at the moment of you and some food and some drinks. So I'm going to try and keep this to probably about 10 or 15 minutes. My name is Ben Sloan. I'm not a privacy activist, nor, despite rumours that you might hear if you talk to some of my colleagues, I'm not a criminal or a hacker. I'm just interested in some of the tech behind some of the stuff that I'm going to show you tonight, and I'm interested in some of the social and the ethical concerns around the privacy. I'd encourage you to think about this stuff and make up your own minds about the stuff from what you're going to see here and whether you think it's good or bad. Some of you may have seen this visualization. I haven't run it past Johnny, actually, but this is the internet as viewed as an iceberg. The surface web is what you can find publicly by typing a phrase into Google. It might be something like a page on Wikipedia. It could be a product listing on Amazon. It could be something like a news article on BBC. If you think if you can share it to your friends and they can click it and see it, then that is available on the surface web. The deep web is a far bigger kind of a surface area, and it's again the stuff that you all use all the time, but it's the things that you need to authenticate to see. So I'm talking about your Gmail inbox, for example, or your online banking statement, or perhaps some music that you stream across Spotify once you've signed in. So it's all that content that's available and quite easy to access, but you can't access it, hopefully, just by typing, Ben Sloan bank statement into Google and finding it. You have to log in and authenticate to get to it. The dark web is a term to kind of collectively describe a set of information on the internet, of which Tor encrypted sites falls into. Private communications, for me, that kind of belongs up here. Drug trafficking sites, illegal information, all this stuff termed in the dark web. A show of hands, if you would. Has anyone heard of Tor? Most of you? Okay, great. So hopefully people have heard of this thing. You've probably got your own ideas about what it is, what it means. To some people it's a browser, and it's a product, the Tor browser. You can use this to hide your activity while you're browsing the internet. It also gives you access to the dark web, or the Tor sites. Some people might think of it as a network topology when they hear of Tor, so they might think of it as the network and the way that your packets get routed around, and the kind of the servers that live in there. Some people would think of that as Tor. Some people might think of it as an anonymous hosting platform. It's a place to put sites, probably nefarious sites. For me, it's kind of all of the above. It's Tor, or the Onion Router. It was initially developed, interestingly, by the US Navy as a worldwide network of servers, and they developed this as a way to securely share information in an encrypted fashion that nobody would be able to kind of snoop on as that traffic went across the browser, across the network. It's a non-profit organisation today, and its main purpose is research and development of online privacy tools. The Tor network, as I've said here, it allows you to disguise your identity by moving your traffic around different servers, as we're going to look at here. So how does it work? You'll see I've brought with me to this talk a Freddo, a packet of Walker's ready salted crisps, and a kind of zero sugar fizzy Vimto. To be honest, I wasn't sure I was going to make it through 15 minutes without a little bit of food. But onion routing is how Tor's kind of guarantees privacy and anonymity. And the items that I've mentioned here have found their way to me by an unusual path. I haven't gone and helped myself to these things, honest. Here we go. So here's my Freddo, my crisps, and my Vimto. And as I said, I haven't been and got these things directly. They've found their way to me. So I'm going to take Dave here in the middle because it's quite an interesting one. I'm going to talk about this Freddo and the journey that it's made. So it started life with Tom, who gave it, passed it along to Darren. Darren passed it on to Dave, who passed it along to Luke, who passed it along to me, and that Freddo is sat here now. What's interesting is if we take Dave in the middle, all Dave knows here is that he's received a Freddo from Darren, and he's passed it on to Luke. In actual fact, that Freddo started its journey with Tom over there and finished up at me. But the point here is that Dave didn't know that. He didn't know where it had started or where it had finished. All he knew was that he'd received it from this location and passed it on to this location. So this is hence the name onion. It's kind of like layers of an onion. So your packet is in the middle. So if you think about this as a request to receive a page from Wikipedia, that's my message. But instead of me going the traditional route and going to Wikipedia and asking, I say, oh, I'm going to go to router A, please will you go to router B and ask router C to go to router D and go to Wikipedia. And crucially, each one of those layers is encrypted so that router A can only see the next message. Please pass this to router B. It can't look underneath to see ultimately what that message is. It could be literally anything. And router C here, all it knows is to pass this message on, but it has no idea it came from router A. It doesn't have access to that level of information. The different way of encrypting, of visualizing it here, so we've got the lady at the top here who wants to communicate with this chap here. These onions represent nodes in the Tor network, and crucially, everybody holds everybody else's public keys. So the lady at the top there, she can determine the route she wants to take because she knows how to encrypt that message at each level. So she'll say, I'm going to encrypt a message for router 3 inside an envelope for router 5, inside an envelope for router 1, and I'm going to send that message on its way. So that's how that packet finds its way through the network. Who funds it is quite an interesting one. As I mentioned at the start of this talk, it was developed by the US Navy. And there's a Freedom of Information Act request here, which shows us that Tor is almost 100% funded by the US government. It's quite an interesting one because if you think about it, if the US Navy create this thing and they're the only ones using it, so you've got this big network and you've got all these servers and they're just sat there and nobody's using it and there's no traffic going through it and somebody wants to make an encrypted message and that is literally the only message passing through the network, it's clear where it started and finished because it's the only one, so it's kind of obvious. So they fund it and they promote it and they try to get people to use it, with the idea being that as they flood it and get slightly more traffic and more and more and more and more and more and more traffic, it's kind of obscures. You can't just pinpoint individuals using it because there's so much data going through it. And they're also in an interesting position, the US government, because they fund it because they want to promote this thing, but then they also have people working to crack it in, for example, the CIA. So they've almost, because of the way that it's being used for nefarious purposes and people using it for illicit activities, they have a vested interest in understanding what's going on inside the network. So they have people over here who are trying to make it more and more and more and more secure, and people over here are trying to break it and break it and break it. And it's just an interesting equilibrium. Is it just a platform for criminals? So the Snoopers Charter, or formerly the Investigatory Powers Act of 2016, is in act in this country now. I encourage you to go and have a look at it. It requires web and phone companies to store everybody's web browsing history for 12 months and gives the police, security services and official agencies unprecedented access to the data. So if you think about what that means, it means that something that you were looking at on your phone 5 months ago is in a log. And someone can, if somebody wants access to that, they can go and ask your ISP and they have to hand it up. There has to be a certain judicial process, but it's still available for that reason. And most people would say, well, I have nothing to hide, so I have nothing to fear. And if you want to snoop on my browsing history or you want to hold that, it's pretty boring. I have nothing to hide, so that's fine. I don't mind that law. But as I said, there's a privacy concern there. Would you want your next GP appointment to be held in a waiting room with everyone else sat around in silence? Probably not. So you have a right to privacy, and that's kind of the two sides of the debate. And again, you have things like people looking for support for things like maybe domestic abuse, victims of assault, or worse, seeking support or refuge. Witnesses to a crime who want to report it to the police without fear of retribution. Concerned patients who have perhaps embarrassing or life-threatening conditions who want to be able to research and understand that without a footprint being left behind for anybody to find for a year. Maybe citizens of an oppressive regime are trying to seek information or find a place to write about how they feel, but they don't want repercussions on themselves or their families of being able to do that stuff. So, the dark web. As I explained earlier on, there's when I did the demo with the items here, these are the nodes inside the dark web, and you can see the blue cloud there is kind of the boundary. These little blue circles, well, these like targets or bullseye targets are the nodes. So these are the machines that do the actual encryption and decryption. And the routers are like signposts. They just direct and they know how to get packets from one place to another. So if you wanted to use the Tor network to access, let's say, Wikipedia, you would enter from your client, The routers would pass you to this node, to this node, to this node. This exit node here is the point between the Tor network and Wikipedia. So crucially, if this is Wikipedia, all that's going to see on its logs is that this Tor node accessed it. It can't be traced back to you. And at the entry point, as I explained earlier with the onion routing, there's no way that that knows ultimately that you were coming over here. There are sites that exist within the boundary of here, which are onion sites or dark websites. And these are sites that you can only get to by being connected to the Tor network. Whereas if this was, for example, Wikipedia, I don't need to use this. I can literally just come around here in the normal fashion. Yes, when you look at charts around what's on there, most of it is dark, and the things, again, I didn't run this one by Johnny, but I think it's pretty, we've got drugs, fraud, Bitcoin, counterfeit, hacking, porn, that kind of stuff, gambling, guns. So, yeah, I guess the most of it is dark, but there are reasonably good reasons why you would want to host a site in here. Is it all drugs and guns? So let's have a look at Facebook, putting aside the news that we hear about their privacy and things. Why would one of the largest organisations known for its invasive stance on privacy have a .onion address? And effectively, they see that as a communication platform for strangers to be able to, or friends or whoever, to be able to communicate in a safe way. So one thing I want to say about these sites, you'll see here, it's not facebook.com, it's Facebook code www.onion, and crucially it's that .onion domain that signifies you're on one of these sites that exists within the Tor network. By being on the Tor network, you offer your users a guarantee of anonymity because there is no way to access those sites except through the network. So because you are only accepting those sites through the network and from nowhere else, you're guaranteeing your users anonymity. So Facebook have got a presence on the Onion, on Tor network, to allow you to discuss things with people in an anonymous way. ProPublica, these are the first online publication that won a Pulitzer. They're also the first major publication with a .onion address. So you've got access to press, again, guaranteed anonymity. Search in private, some of you might have heard of DuckDuckGo. They an alternative to Google with privacy built in by design, so they don't audit stuff, they don't track you, they don't make adverts based on your profile, and they've got an onion address. Whistleblowing site, you can make an anonymous complaint against the police, which will be investigated and taken seriously. And again, that's the kind of thing you'd probably want to do anonymously. And by it being in the Onion site, or an Onion site, that guarantee of anonymity is there. There's no way for them to track you. They literally can't, even if they wanted to. You sit on a great story, you need to share it anonymously with the team here from The Intercept. Anybody? There is a site here. They're also one of the only few Onion sites with a TLS certificate, so again, that underscores their strong stance on privacy. So again, I'd say where something exists that people can find bad ways to use, they will find bad ways to use it. A lady called Eva Galperin said, Tor's biggest problem is press. No one hears about the time that somebody wasn't stalked by an abuser. They hear how somebody got away with downloading child porn. And from the FAQs on the Tor project, the message is that criminals can already do bad things, and they're already prepared to break laws, and there's probably better options than this if they really want to do those things. So yes, criminals could in theory use it, but they probably have better options, and it kind of seems unlikely that by removing this thing from the world, it's actually going to stop them from doing those bad things. I have presented this talk before to a group of people from AO, and it did prompt, probably a week later, a message coming out from our Director of IT Services who'd noticed a spike of people accessing and downloading the Tor browser and accessing this thing at work because they were interested in it. Great, I encourage you, I implore you to look into this stuff, look into the things around it. By all means, download it. It isn't illegal to use Tor, it isn't illegal to access these sites. I urge an abundance of caution. And please do it on your own devices in your own time. And as you've seen with the sites that are up here, these websites are all kind of weird. DuckDuckGo is 3GP2 UPL4 blah 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 .onion because it's quite hard. You can't register a domain name like you can with a .com. You can cryptographically try and find them, which is why Facebook have got something that's got the word Facebook in it. But like, if you look at that, it's like, am I on the right site? It's really hard to know. So, yeah, you need to be conscious of that sort of stuff. If you're going to explore here, I really would encourage an abundance of caution. And please don't do it on any work devices. I'm really interested to talk about this stuff. If anyone's got any questions, I'm not going to do it now because everyone's a little, wants to stand up and stretch their legs and things. But I'll be around, so come and chat to me, and thanks for listening. I've been Ben Sloan. I'm on LinkedIn, or it's ben.sloan@ao.com if you'd like to get in touch. Thanks.